Welcome to our fourth virtual service here at All Souls Tulsa. That means we started living in this upside down world almost a month ago, which feels impossible, but is still true. We are starting to figure out how things work around here at church, just as I imagine you are starting to figure out how things work in this new world, in your own homes. I'm certainly learning a lot. I'm learning about microphones and recording apps and technologies. I'm super curious what you may be learning in your day-to-day lives. I'm sure there's a lot. I'm feeling grateful, more grateful than ever, to be part of a community of people who care about other people, who truly care, and not just about people, but also about the planet. I've been thinking about how even with the pandemic and the rising number of deaths, there's something heartening about seeing how quickly the skies and the rivers are clearing up. And you, our members and friends, have been so affirming of our efforts here. Thank you for each and every email of thanks and appreciation. Each and every one means the world to us, truly. I'm in our empty sanctuary again, but I want you to know, in case you haven't seen it, that our sign out on our front lawn, our marquee, says our doors are closed and our hearts are open, which is so true. Our hearts are open. We are taking really good care of ourselves, and I hope that you are taking really good care of yourselves as well. I think we have a really great service for you on this first Sunday in April, and I know that our senior minister, Reverend Lavinar, has a very special pastoral care message for you as well. Welcome to All Souls, where we love beyond belief.
Last Sunday, Barbara lit a chalice at the beginning of our service and extinguished it at the end. And she invited you at home to light a candle or light a chalice and worship with us. And then you can extinguish yours at the end of the service, and we'll have this little ritual that we can do together during this time while we're apart and worshiping at home. So with that, I will light this morning's chalice with these words. We come together even as we're far apart. We come with lots of different feelings. We come with expectations. We come with hope, with heartbreak. In so many different ways, we come this morning to be together, even in our distance. Most of all, we come because we love each other and we care about one another, and we are a community. Please join me as we begin with these words from our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Voices, everybody. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving houses, no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come. Come, yet again, come. Come, yet again, come. Come, yet again, come. Come yet again, come yet again, come.
This is no caravan of despair. Ours is no caravan of despair because we know that each and every one of us has a part to play in this story unfolding all around the world. Each of us has a part to play, no matter what our nationality, our gender, our religion, or our age. I heard a folk tale from China many years ago, and I loved it so much, I've never forgotten it. It's a story about an elephant and a hummingbird. The elephant is walking down the road, and he stops when he sees a tiny little hummingbird lying right in the middle of the road. She's lying on her back with her legs sticking up straight at the sky. The elephant stops and asks her, "What are you doing, little hummingbird? Why are you lying in the middle of the road on your back with your little legs sticking straight up at the sky?" And the little hummingbird answers, "I heard that the sky might fall today. And so I thought about what I could do, and I wanted to do my part, and so I'm lying here waiting to catch the sky." And the elephant started to laugh and to make fun of and to mock the little hummingbird, and he laughed and laughed, and he told her, "You are so small and so weak, there's no way your weak little legs are going to catch the sky or stop it from falling." And the little hummingbird listened to the elephant. She thought about what he said, and then she said, "I won't be able to stop the sky from falling all by myself, but I can do my part, and I am determined and devoted to doing my part." Which is the end of our story, which I offer to you in the week to come as the weight of the pandemic falls upon you or lands in your heart. I encourage you to remember the hummingbird and to ask yourself the same questions the hummingbird asked herself. What part can I play? What can I do with the strength I have, the knowledge I have, the connections I have to support others, to support my church, to support my city, my community, the world? What part of the sky is mine to hold up? My prayer for all of us is that each of our efforts equal the humility and the courage of the hummingbird in our folktale. May it be so.
A holy place, when our heart is in a holy place. Come on. We are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. We are blessed with love and amazing. When our heart is in, when our heart is in a holy place. Let's sing it together. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. We are blessed with love. We are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in holy
There is a light. There is a light that is within each of us, that is part of the light that is everything that exists. As you know, we came from the stars. And so there is a luminosity and a radiance that's within all of us. And it's at times like these that we have to access that light. It's in dark times that that light becomes even more important. If we want hope to survive, which we do in our world today, then there's some ways that we can bring our light forward and make a huge difference on everything, because we are truly interconnected with everything that exists in the world. So our world has been flipped upside down. Things that were as normal and simple, everyday things like going to the grocery store has become scary. For some people, it's become life-threatening. We are told that it's going to get worse before it gets better, and it's been getting pretty bad. This past week, we heard that 1,200 people died in one day from this virus. They are bringing out refrigerator trucks as makeshift morgues in New York to hold the bodies. So we are at a time when we went from the best employment numbers that we'd ever seen in the history of our country to 3 million reaching out for unemployment, to 6 million, to this week 10 million people around the country seeking unemployment insurance. And so we are seeing this escalate. Healthcare workers who are having to decide between living their calling and living what they have been trained to do and want to do to help people and protecting their own families. They're in an ethical, moral dilemma. And it is a difficult, difficult time. And what Michael Meade says is that in times of crisis, we either grow a bigger soul or we become a smaller person. And when he talks about soul, he's talking about a vitality that's at the center of our existence, an energy, a life force that is a part of who we are, that's been passed down throughout the generations, and that we have the ability to bring out in a time like this. For many of us, this past week was the time when the first person who we know or is related to someone who we know died of the COVID-19 virus. Pastor David Smith, our executive director of worship and choir leader, his father, Bishop Robert Earl Smith Sr., who has come to All Souls a number of times over the years, coming to visit David and his family, and he would always come to church at All Souls. And when he was there, I'd say, Bishop, come on forward and share a word with us, offer us a prayer or a blessing. And I did that the first time he came. And his words were so inspiring, and they were so heartfelt, and they were so appropriate to the moment that every time he came back, I was so glad to see him, and I invited him forward. So he has prayed with us and ministered to us in this community and to me. One time when he came, I asked him to come talk to me personally, and he prayed for me around some personal things that I was going through. And he's just a wonderful man who poured out his life for others, and yet at the moment of his dying, he was all alone. Of course, he would tell us if he were here, I wasn't alone. I was surrounded by the Spirit, by God, who has been with me all of my life. And so he was a man of great faith, and so I know his faith carried him through that. But our hearts go out and our prayers to his family who couldn't be with him and hold his hands. He has wonderful children, all of whom are impacting our world in lots of positive ways. He has an incredible legacy, and he's a beloved person. And it's hard not to be able to gather and memorialize people's lives at times like this. So what I wanted to talk about is, how do we, in such times, bring our light forward and keep hope alive? And I was listening to a podcast by Michael Meade this week, and he went back to maybe the oldest or some of the oldest writings that we have, the Upanishads from India. And he found a story about the light and the darkness in dark times. In it, a king asked a sage, the wisest man around, by what light do people make their way in the world and live their lives and their callings and their gifts in the world? And the sage said, well, of course, by the light of the sun. And then the king said, yeah, but if the sun goes out, then what? And he said, well, then they do it by the light of the moon. And this continued. He said, yeah, but what if the moon goes out? And he said, well, then by the light of the stars. Yeah, but if the stars are out, he said, then people live by the light of a fire. If the fire goes out, then by the light of a candle. But if the candles go out, said the king, and the people are in darkness, then what? And the sage said, then we live by the light from within. Every one of us has a light from within, and Meade reminds us that it's at times like this that light that's within each of us, which is part of everything in existence, when it awakens within us, it brings something alive in the whole world. And so as we let our light shine, we begin to transform the world and the people around us, and we ignite the light within them. And I've been seeing this happening all around us, even right in our own congregation. Nolan Ramza, who as a child grew up, his mother was a seamstress. She would sew all kinds of beautiful things, and as a child he'd sit at her feet. He learned how to sew and is quite good at it, but hasn't had a lot of opportunity to do it for a while, but has begun to sew masks, custom-made, beautiful cloth masks for people, and is giving them away to folks. And it's just a beautiful ministry, a mask ministry, if you can imagine it. And we've got people like Joe Nuri and John Boston and Libby Billings and others who are finding ways to make food and feed the homeless, those in our community who might not have other people to care for them, who might be quite vulnerable in a time like this, who are quite vulnerable, finding ways to care for them. It's beautiful to see how they're keeping themselves safe and other people safe while also doing this good work. Members of our congregation have volunteered to call other members so that we're calling each other, and people are checking in on one another and finding out what their needs are and making sure they know how to get in touch with the community and the ministers. Reverend Barbara Prose, a couple of weeks ago, when this all began, did a chapel service with Rick Fortner, and they talked about building altars for at home. Since we can't be in church, how can we create an altar, a sacred space in our homes during this time? Well, Nicole Ogundari and Nolan again, they have taken this idea to a whole new level. They've each made altars within their own homes, and there's each one on those altars, They have pictures of beloved family members, friends, members of our community who have died. They have they represent things that they are missing or that are being lost or that could get lost if we don't remember them. Each of them have an adult daughter who had a birthday last week, couldn't celebrate in the ways that they wanted to with family, with friends, going out. They don't want those special moments in our lives to get lost. Nicole's son, Nicholas, is in our 9th grade coming of age class. They weren't able to go on their trip to Boston, and so many elements of that program that are having to be adjusted at this time. So they put these things in this altar, and then they came to me and to Barbara and to the rest of the staff and said, hey, would it be okay if we create an altar at the church that we can invite members of our congregation to send in email, pictures, and other things that they want to have included in the altar, things that people or things or events that they're missing that they want to make sure don't get forgotten in this time. And so they've started to build this altar in the foyer at the church, and they're inviting all of us to send them, again, pictures or other things. So they've written about it, and it's on our Beyond Belief blog, on our website. It'll be posted, a link on our Facebook page. So you can find out how you can help us to build this altar so that when we come back to church, whether it's in 4 weeks or a couple of months or whenever it is, that we'll come back and this altar will be there in our foyer to remind us of how we came together in this time. It's a beautiful vision, and it's one of the ways that we bring our light, our vitality, our creativity, our luminosity alive in this time and help to bring it alive in our world. That is how we will keep hope alive, and that is how we are doing it. And I know we'll get through this, and we'll get through it together, and there's so many other ways, and I can't wait to see what other things we come up with to help give us a guiding light through these dark times.
If we want hope to survive in this world today, then every day we've got to pray on, pray on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, then every day we've got to pray on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, got to every day we've got to walk on, walk on. If we want hope to survive, got to walk on today. We've got to every day we've got to walk on, walk on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, got to every day we've got to work on, work on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, got to every day we've got to work on, work on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, got to every day we've got to move on, move on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, got to every day we've got to move on, move on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, got to every day we've got to march on, march on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, every day we've got to march on, march on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, every day we've got to teach on, teach on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, every day we've got to teach on, teach on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, every day we've got to sing on, sing on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, every day we've got to sing on, sing on. 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 Every day we've got to sing on.
Good morning. I want to introduce you to Sanjit Bunker Roy, who was born in India and was educated in some of the country's top institutions. He was gifted with a bright intellect and was destined for a prestigious career as a lawyer or a doctor because his mother had big, big dreams for him. However, when he was a teenager in 1965, a famine broke out in one of the poorest provinces in India, and Bunker went to see for himself what was happening there. When he returned home, he packed his bags and he told his mother that he was moving to the village. When she asked him what he was planning to do there, he said he was just going to work as a laborer digging wells. Bunker said that his mother almost went into a coma. She refused to talk to him for years. And friends of her would tell her that he was just being an idealistic teenager, that soon enough he would become disillusioned with the world and he would come home, but he didn't. After years of digging wells, Bunker started noticing that the men in the village would get their education and then they would leave for the big cities and never return and never invested in the village. So he had an idea. He decided to educate young grandmothers between the ages of 35 and 50 who had more free time than younger mothers. Even though these grandmothers were illiterate, he wanted to train them to become solar engineers. And he did just that. Although at first he was laughed at and criticized, but he persevered, and soon enough he was training hundreds of women who were able to provide solar energy for their villages across India and Africa. Eventually, he started the Barefoot College, which has trained over 3 million people in skills ranging from solar engineering to teaching to architecture. Roy, who is now 74 years old, has been able to harness the skills of communities across the world and empower women to become agents of sustainable change within their communities. Where did that impulse come from for young Bunker Roy? He was just a teenager when he felt that impulse to help. What made him give up his future, his bright future, in order to move to a village and dig wells? Altruism. Altruism is a benevolence that is present in most human beings, that make us delight in the happiness of others, that make us invest in the well-being of others. Altruism is a devotion to the welfare of human beings as well as other sentient beings. Stories of altruism such as the one of Bunker Roy are not very common, but that doesn't mean that the impulse is not there. That doesn't mean that we human beings don't have that altruistic nature in us. In fact, we do. For years in Western culture, we have heard messages such as, "Man is wolf to man," or "I have found little that is good about human beings on the whole. In my experience, most of them are trash." Ouch. Fortunately, in spite of those messages, and in spite of some of our history of violence, there is so much more to us than that. In a recent book by Nicholas Christakis, who is the Sterling Professor of Social and Natural Sciences at Yale University, he says that for far too long, for way too long, philosophers and scientists have focused on the dark side of our humanity. But now, drawing on decades of research in social science, in evolutionary biology, in genetics, and in neuroscience, he explains in his book how and why evolution put us on a humane path. He shows that in spite of our history, we are wired for goodness and for collaboration. Of course, the natural and historical forces that shape our personality are powerful and they are important. But he says he's interested in forces that have been operating for much longer periods of time than just our culture. Much more powerful evolutionary forces that move through us, which propel us towards goodness, towards love, and towards collaboration. Yes, we certainly have an astounding capacity for aggression, for prejudice, and self-interest. And let us not forget, we cannot ignore the also primal forces within ourselves that make us gather into groups where some can come in and others must stay out. making it easier for us to be altruistic towards those in our group, but much harder to extend our kindness and our compassion to others outside the group. But altruism really is part of our nature. Researcher Alison Gopnik, who teaches philosophy and psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, has always been fascinated with babies. Early in her life, she would read philosophers who were trying to understand the nature of human beings, and she was like, why don't we look at babies? They can teach us a lot, instead of thinking that they are born as a blank slate. In her cognitive science lab at the University of California, Berkeley, as a philosopher and a psychologist, Gopnik is working on just that, learning from toddlers and babies. Altruism comes naturally for kids. A large study in the 80s placed a mother along with her toddler in a room when a stranger comes in needing help. If you drop something in front of a 2-year-old, she is likely to pick it up for you. If you can't get into a cabinet because your hands are full with books, you can count on the toddler to wander over and open the door without being asked. What we're learning is that while the term survival of the fittest has been used and abused for decades, we see now that it's more about the survival of the friendliest, because we have been able to survive because of our capacity to love, to cooperate, to share knowledge, and to have empathy for the pain and the struggle of others. When the news of the COVID-19 pandemic first came out, yes, some people started hoarding. But also the world started cooperating, sharing information and resources on how to contain the virus and protect human lives. Across the United States, people started sewing face masks for nurses in New York City. Musicians have been giving free concerts from their living rooms. Breweries started making hand sanitizers for us. We have seen so many acts of altruism. Here in Tulsa, this week, the Botanical Garden caught many of their 100,000 tulips and brought them to the hospitals for medical staff and patients to enjoy. And right here at All Souls, our building manager, Nolan, has been making masks for us. Here are the two that he made for me. I couldn't decide between the colorful one or the polka dot one, so he made me both. Also this week, an angel, a member of this congregation, contacted me because she was concerned about the undocumented workers in our community who can work now and won't be able to receive the benefit of unemployment and the stimulus package. She was worried about their well-being, so she donated a few $1,000s to help those families pay for basic necessities during these challenging times. Acts of altruism can be large or small, but they have a tremendous positive impact in our physical health, our well-being, and in society in general. I want to introduce you now to someone else I have been following for a few years. This is Matteo Ricard, a Tibetan Buddhist monk who has been called the world's happiest man. Ricard was born in France, but he has spent most of his life in monasteries in the mountains of northern India. In the early 2000s, he was invited to participate in a 12-year-long study in neuroscience at the University of Wisconsin, where they attached 256 sensors to his skull. And the researchers were shocked to see that when he meditated on compassion, his brain produced a large level of gamma waves that were off the charts, meaning that he had an abnormally large capacity for happiness and a low propensity towards negativity. In his book, Altruism, the Power of Compassion to Change Yourself and the World, he speaks of the benefits of altruism to improve our well-being and the well-being of the world. He also speaks of the importance of extending altruism, the necessity of spreading our loving kindness towards all beings inside and outside of our circle. He says that altruism is like rings in the water when you toss a pebble. At first, they are very small, then they get larger, and finally they embrace the entire surface of the ocean. Matteo and I and many of these researchers believe that altruism is the antidote to many of the social injustices we are experiencing in the world, caused by the selfishness of some at the expense of others. Altruism is also the cure for many of the issues that trouble our soul, such as the lack of purpose that many of us are feeling. Now, there are many ways to cultivate altruism. One of them is practicing some kind of compassion meditation or loving kindness meditation. The same researchers found that meditating on compassion for just 20 minutes a day for 4 weeks can literally change our brain for the better. Because of neuroplasticity, the repetition of something over and over and over can create patterns in the brain, and after that, it almost becomes automatic. At first, it feels like an impossible task, but thanks to this neuroplasticity, it becomes second nature. This is the case too for compassion and for altruism. We practice it until it becomes our second nature. And the more we practice it, the more we expand in our capacity for joy. Altruism might be the surest path to feeling better when we are down, because kindness makes us happy and happiness makes us kind. It is a cycle that promotes lasting happiness and altruism. Another study, this one out of Harvard University, conducted in the 1980s, proved that people simply watching an altruistic act, in this case a short film of Mother Teresa tending orphans in Calcutta, that simple act of seeing an altruistic act would boost their immune system. It's fascinating. Therefore, while competition, individualism, and selfishness are at the root of many of the social issues that afflict society today, altruism can be the antidote. Moving away from the smallness of the mentality of what's better for me to a more expansive and more generous way of thinking about what's better for the whole ecosystem. Shifting from thinking of the self to thinking of the whole is how we activate our innate gift of altruism, how we align with these evolutionary forces that are already running underneath the first surface. This is the blueprint that evolution has given us for creating happier and healthier individuals, as well as happier and healthier societies. And this is also our purpose, to do the work that leads to the betterment of humanity, to the flourishing of all. May we cultivate, activate, and expand our altruistic inheritance. May it be so.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Sing it with me. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, when I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, when I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, when I breathe in, oh, I breathe in, oh,
Hello again, beloveds. I want to take this moment of prayer or meditation to introduce you to my favorite meditation, which is also a prayer. When I say I'm going to pray for you, this is what I mean. So I invite you now to close your eyes if you're willing and able, and follow along this meditation of loving kindness or Metta meditation. There are many forms. You can create your own. This is mine, the one that feels natural to me. I have been doing it for about 20 years. So what you do is you close your eyes, you soften your face, and you think of someone who loves you. In your mind's eyes, you can think of that person standing in front of you and just sending their love to you, their loving kindness. And feel that love within yourself. And now you can think of someone else who needs that love, and you think of that person. And then you say to that person, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be filled with loving kindness. You extend that love to them. Now you bring back that awareness to yourself, and you say, may I be well, may I be peaceful, may I be happy, may I be filled with loving kindness. And again we think about someone else, and we say to them, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be filled with loving kindness. Again, back to us, and we say, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be filled with loving kindness. Another form of this meditation is to think of yourself or another person and surround that person in your mind with a loving light, a loving healing light. And then you open up that circle and you surround the whole neighborhood with that loving light. And then you expand that and include the whole city in that loving light, surrounded by loving light. And then the whole country, the whole continent, until eventually the whole world is surrounded by your loving kindness. This is an easy meditation you can do daily. Again, it has tremendous benefits for our well-being. And now I close by saying, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, and may you be filled with loving kindness. May it be so.
What a wonderful, very significant meditation, especially in these times. I encourage you to experiment with the meditation and make it part of your daily practice at home this week. I also hope you'll check in with us on a daily basis, either by reading our blog, clicking onto our Facebook page, and checking our website. We are slowly and steadily expanding our virtual programming on Wednesday evenings and on Sunday mornings, and sometimes even during the week. Many of our boards and committees and teams are beginning to meet virtually. People are really enjoying staying connected in whatever ways we can. Our staff is truly amazing. So I hope you will help us continue to support our collaborative, creative, consistent, committed staff by donating to our offering this Sunday. You can do that by mailing a check to All Souls or by texting your support to 73256, and the message is LOVEBB. Thank you for joining us again this Sunday morning, the first Sunday in April. Until we meet again, we will now gratefully receive this morning's offering.
We extinguish our chalice, but may the light of love continue to warm our hearts until we are together again. As I extinguish this chalice with these words, if we are only for ourselves, then what are we good for? If we are for one another, then no one is ever alone. May love be our guide.
We are